I'll take every inch until you can't sit right. The giant mail-order bride boasts, the quiet rancher took. Her inside, I'll take every inch until you can't sit right. That's what the giant mail-order bride boasted to the quiet rancher the moment she stepped off the stagecoach. And what he did next would shatter every defense she'd ever built. Margot Kincaid, a giant mail-order bride standing 6 feet 2 inches, tall with a blacksmith's shoulders and a widow's wounded heart, threw those shocking words at the quiet rancher like a weapon. She expected him to flinch, to run, to prove he couldn't handle a woman bold enough to say, "I'll take every inch until you can't sit right." But Silas Thorne, the quiet rancher, who'd survived war and widowhood, didn't flinch when this giant mail-order bride made her outrageous boast. This quiet rancher had learned that the loudest threats are often the most terrified. When the giant mail-order bride said, "I'll take every inch until you can't sit right," the quiet rancher saw what she was really saying. "Please be strong enough that I don't have to be." The quiet rancher looked up at this giant mail-order bride with her defensive boasts and terrified eyes, and said 3 words that changed everything. "Come inside." And he took her inside. But what would this quiet rancher do when the giant mail-order bride who boasted, "I'll take every inch until you can't sit right," discovered that he saw through her armor? Could a giant mail-order bride who'd lost everything trust a quiet rancher who refused to be intimidated? And what secret strength was this quiet rancher hiding? The kind that would prove, "I'll take every inch until you can't sit right," wasn't a threat at all, but a desperate plea to be seen. What happened next would prove that the strongest people are often the quietest, and the boldest words hide the most fragile hearts. The Wyoming dust hadn't even settled when Margot climbed down from the stagecoach, boots hitting the ground with purpose. She was done being small, done apologizing, done pretending she was something delicate that needed protecting. Her first husband had been gentle, kind, and then he died in a mining collapse 6 months into their marriage, leaving her with nothing but grief and the terrifying knowledge that gentleness didn't protect you from loss. So she'd built walls, big ones, made of words sharp enough to cut and a swagger that dared anyone to come close enough to hurt her again. Silas Thorne stood on his porch, hat in hand, watching her approach. He was shorter than she'd imagined from his letters, lean and weathered like old leather. His eyes were brown, calm, unreadable. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just watched. Margot hated being watched. She marched right up to him, stuck out her hand like a man conducting business. "Margot Kincaid, you're Silas Thorne, I assume." "I am." His voice was quiet, deep. His handshake was firm but not aggressive. "Welcome to—" "Before we go any further," Margot interrupted, loud enough that the stagecoach driver turned to stare, "I need you to understand something about me. I'm not some blushing virgin who's going to swoon at your feet. I'm 6 feet 2 inches of woman who knows exactly what she wants. And in the bedroom?" She leaned down, getting right in his face. "I'll take every inch until you can't sit right for a week. So if that scares you, say so now, and I'll get back on that coach." The silence that followed was deafening. The stagecoach driver's mouth hung open. Even the horses seemed to pause. Margot's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment he'd recoil, stammer, maybe laugh nervously and tell her there'd been some mistake. She'd seen it before, men who wanted a wife but couldn't handle a woman. But Silas didn't recoil. He didn't laugh. He just looked at her with those unreadable brown eyes, then bent down, picked up her carpet bag and said, "Come inside then." He turned and walked into the house. Margot stood frozen. What, that was it? No shock, no offense? No crude acceptance that would let her categorize him as just another pig? The stagecoach driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you want me to wait?" Margot's pride made the decision before her brain could catch up. "No, drive on." She followed Silas into the house, her mind spinning. The interior was nothing like she expected. Clean, organized books on shelves. A pot of something that smelled like venison stew on the stove. Curtains on the windows. This wasn't the desperate hovel of a lonely man. This was a home that someone cared for. Silas set her bag down by the stairs and turned to face her. In the softer light she could see him better. Scars on his hands, lines around his eyes from squinting into sun. A body that was lean but strong, not from vanity but from necessity. That speech you just gave, Silas said quietly, leaning against the table. How many times have you practiced it? Margot's jaw tightened. I meant every word. I'm sure you did. But that's not what I asked. He crossed his arms. I asked how many times you practiced saying something shocking enough to drive me away before I could hurt you first. The air left Margot's lungs. How did he? I'm a quiet man, Margot. That doesn't mean I'm blind. He took a step closer. I see what you're doing. I understand it even. You've been hurt, so you go on the offensive. Make yourself so loud and crude and intimidating that men either run or prove they're exactly the kind of shallow bastards you expect. You don't know anything about me, Margot said. But her voice had lost its edge. I know you're terrified. I know that boast out there wasn't confidence, it was armor. And I know you expected me to fail your test. Another step closer. He had to look up to meet her eyes, but somehow that didn't diminish him. It made her feel naked, exposed. But here's what you don't know about me yet. What? The word came out barely above a whisper. I don't scare easy. I spent 3 years as an army scout. I've been shot at, starved, frozen, and left for dead. A beautiful woman saying something shocking doesn't even register on my list of frightening things. His voice stayed soft, but there was steel underneath. And I don't run from women who need to feel powerful because the world spent too long making them feel powerless. Margot felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crack. What do you want from me? The truth, not the performance. Silas gestured to the table. Sit down. I'm going to finish making supper, and you're going to tell me about your first husband. Margot's knees gave out. She sank into a chair. How did you know? Your letter said you were widowed. You didn't say how or when, but I'm guessing it's recent. And I'm guessing it broke something inside you that you're trying to protect by breaking everyone else first. Tears burned behind Margot's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. He died 6 months after we married. Mining accident. One day he kissed me goodbye, and that night they brought me his body. Silas moved to the stove, stirred the stew, but his attention never left her. And you never got to say goodbye? Never got to tell him you were scared? Never got closure? No. The word cracked. My wife died 5 years ago, Silas said quietly. Childbirth. The baby, too. A son. He ladled stew into 2 bowls. I spent the first year drunk, the 2nd year angry, the 3rd year alone, because I'd convinced myself I didn't deserve another chance. He set a bowl in front of her and sat down across the table. And then I realized something. I had 2 choices. Die slowly out here alone, or risk my heart one more time. You're my risk, Margot. And I think I'm yours. Margot stared at this quiet rancher who somehow saw through every defense she'd built. I don't know if I can stop performing. I don't know if I remember how to be vulnerable. Then don't, not yet. Silas reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm, steady. But maybe tonight you can take off just 1 piece of armor. Tell me one true thing, and I'll do the same. And we'll see if we can build something real on top of all this fear. Margot looked at their joined hands. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. I'm terrified you'll realize I'm not worth the risk. There's your truth. Silas squeezed her hand gently. Here's mine. I'm terrified I'll fail you the way I failed my wife. That I'll wake up one morning and you'll be gone because I wasn't enough. They sat in the quiet, 2 wounded people, holding onto each other's hands like lifelines. The stew grew cold. The light outside faded to dusk, and slowly, impossibly, Margot felt something she hadn't felt since her husband died. Safe. They ate in silence at first. Not the awkward silence of strangers, but something different, something careful. Like 2 wild animals circling each other, trying to decide if the other was safe. Margot kept glancing at Silas across the table. He ate methodically, without hurry, every movement deliberate, controlled. It should have made her nervous. That kind of control usually meant someone was hiding something. But with him, it felt different. Like he'd learned to be still, because stillness kept you alive. You said you were an army scout, Margot said finally, breaking the quiet. For 8 years. Arizona Territory mostly. Tracking Apaches, mapping routes, keeping soldiers from getting lost and killed. He set down his spoon. It teaches you to read people, to see what they're not saying. And what am I not saying? Silas leaned back in his chair, studying her with those calm brown eyes. That you're exhausted, not just tired. Exhausted from pretending to be harder than you are. That you came here hoping I'd either be strong enough to see through you or cruel enough to justify leaving. He paused. And that you have no idea what to do now that I'm neither. Margot's throat tightened. You think you're so smart? No, I think I recognize pain because I've lived it. He stood, started clearing the dishes. The question is what we do about it. What do you mean? Silas turned to face her. You made a boast out there. A challenge. And I accepted it by bringing you inside. But here's what you don't understand yet, Margot. That challenge wasn't about sex. It was about whether I could handle all of you. The anger, the fear, the walls, the wounds, everything. Margot stood too, her height suddenly feeling less like armor and more like exposure. And can you handle all of me? I don't know yet. His honesty was disarming. But I'm willing to try if you are. Something cracked open in Margot's chest. This quiet rancher wasn't promising her everything would be perfect. He wasn't making grand declarations. He was just offering to try, to see her, to stay. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be the woman you need. I don't need you to be anything except honest. Silas crossed to her slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. She didn't. The woman who walked off that stagecoach today, loud and crude and terrifying, that's armor. And armor serves a purpose. It keeps you safe. But it also keeps everyone else out. Maybe that's the point, maybe. But you didn't travel 400 miles to stay alone, Margot. You came here because some part of you, buried deep under all that armor, still believes you deserve to be loved. Tears spilled down Margot's cheeks before she could stop them. What if I don't know how to take off the armor anymore? Then we start slow. Silas reached up and cupped her face. His hands were rough but gentle, one piece at a time. And if it gets too scary, you can put it back on. I'm not going anywhere. How can you promise that? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave enough to make a shocking boast to protect yourself. I know you're strong enough to survive losing someone you loved. I know you're honest enough to admit when you're scared. His thumb wiped away her tears. That's enough for me to work with. Margot closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, despite every instinct screaming at her to pull away. What happens now? Now we test whether that boast of yours was about taking control or asking to let go of it. Her eyes snapped open. What? Silas's expression was gentle but knowing. You said you'd take every inch until I couldn't sit right. But what you were really asking was whether I'm strong enough to let you surrender without judging you for it. Whether I can give you permission to stop being the strongest person in the room for once in your life. Margot's breath caught. He'd seen it. The thing she barely admitted to herself. She was so tired of being strong. So tired of being the one who had to hold everything together. The boast wasn't about domination. It was a test to see if he was strong enough that she could finally stop pretending. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. So am I, Silas took her hand. But being scared together is better than being brave alone. Come on, he led her toward the stairs. Margot's heart hammered. This was it. The moment she'd been both dreading and desperately wanting. But as they climbed the stairs to his bedroom, she realized something startling. She wasn't afraid of what would happen. She was afraid of how much she wanted it. The bedroom was simple. A large bed with a quilt. A window overlooking the dark Wyoming landscape. An oil lamp casting soft shadows. Everything neat, ordered, safe. Silas lit the lamp and turned to face her. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Margot nodded, her throat too tight for words. When you made that boast today, what did you really want? The truth, Margot, not what you think you should say. She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. But his hand caught her chin gently, turned her face back to his. "The truth," he repeated softly. "I wanted—" Her voice broke. She tried again. "I wanted someone strong enough that I didn't have to be. I wanted someone who wouldn't flinch when I tried to scare them away. I wanted—" The words came out in a rush, raw and desperate. "I wanted someone who could see that underneath all my loudness, I just want to be held, to be safe. To not have to be so damn strong all the time." Silas's eyes shone with understanding. "Then that's what you'll get. Not what you boasted. What you actually need. But don't you want—" "What I want," Silas interrupted gently, "is for you to trust me enough to let go. To stop performing. To just be Margot. Scared and wounded and exhausted, without the armor." He stepped closer. "Can you do that? Can you let me be strong enough for both of us tonight?" Margot felt something break inside her. Some wall she'd been holding up since the day they brought her husband's broken body home. "Yes," she whispered. "Please." Silas pulled her close, and Margot collapsed against him. She was so much bigger. Her head bent down to his shoulder, her frame engulfing his, but somehow he felt like the solid one, the steady one, the one who wouldn't break under the weight of her grief. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "I've got you, Margot. You don't have to be strong right now. You don't have to protect yourself. You're safe here." And for the first time since she'd stepped off that stagecoach with her crude boast and defensive walls, Margot believed him. She let herself be held. Let herself be small. Let herself surrender to the quiet strength of a man who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone else carry you for a while. Outside, the Wyoming wind howled. Inside, two broken people began the slow, terrifying work of healing together. Silas held her until her breathing steadied, until the trembling in her shoulders eased, until she stopped fighting the comfort he offered. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clearer than they'd been since she arrived. "I don't understand you," Margot said, her voice rough from crying. Most men would have taken that boast as an invitation, would have tried to prove something. But you— "I'm not most men." Silas guided her to sit on the edge of the bed. He knelt in front of her, unlacing her boots. The gesture was intimate but not sexual, caring. And that boast wasn't an invitation. It was a wall. The biggest, loudest wall you could build. Margot watched his hands work the laces. Strong hands. Scarred hands. Gentle hands. "What are you doing?" "Taking care of you, the way you need to be taken care of, not the way you think you should need it." He removed one boot, then the other, set them aside neatly. Then he stood and offered his hand. "Stand up." She did, towering over him again. But this time, her height didn't feel like armor. It felt like exposure. "Turn around," Silas said softly. Margot hesitated, then obeyed. She felt his fingers at the buttons running down her spine. The same buttons she'd struggled with that morning. Dressing alone in a boarding house, preparing herself for battle. "I'm going to unbutton your dress," Silas said quietly. "Not to undress you for my pleasure, but to help you get comfortable, to let you breathe. Is that all right?" "Yes." The word came out barely audible. One by one, the buttons came undone. Cool air touched her back. She felt vulnerable, exposed, but not threatened. "There," Silas said when the last button was free. "You can change into your nightgown. I'll be downstairs. Take your time." He turned to leave, but Margot's voice stopped him. "Wait," he turned back. "Yes? Why are you doing this? Being so—" She struggled for the word. "Kind? Don't you want what I offered? Don't you want to prove you're man enough to handle me?" Silas's expression was patient, understanding. "Margot, I don't need to prove I'm man enough. I already know what I am, and what you offered wasn't really what you wanted. It was a test, a way to control the situation before it could control you." He stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "What you actually want, what you actually need, is someone who won't make you perform, someone who sees through the armor and loves what's underneath anyway. And you think you're that someone." "I think I could be, if you let me." He moved toward the door again. "Change, get comfortable. When you're ready, come downstairs. We'll talk more, or not talk. Whatever you need." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Margot stood alone in the quiet bedroom, her dress hanging open, her heart hammering. This wasn't what she'd expected. She'd expected him to take her boast literally, to either be intimidated or aroused, to treat her like a conquest or a threat. Instead, he treated her like a person, a wounded person who needed gentleness more than passion, safety more than excitement. It terrified her more than any crude advance could have. She changed into her nightgown, simple, white cotton that made her feel less like the bold woman who'd stepped off the stagecoach, and more like the scared widow she actually was. She braided her long dark hair, washed her face in the basin he'd left for her. Then she sat on the bed, staring at the closed door, trying to decide what she wanted. The old Margot, the armored Margot, wanted to march downstairs and reassert control, prove she wasn't soft, wasn't vulnerable, wasn't someone who needed taking care of. But the real Margot, the one buried under years of grief and fear, wanted something different. She wanted to go downstairs and let this quiet rancher hold her again, wanted to admit she was tired, wanted to surrender to the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, she deserved kindness. She made her choice. Downstairs, Silas sat by the fireplace, a book open on his lap, but his eyes on the flames. He looked up when he heard her on the stairs. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were warm. "You came down," he said simply. "I came down." Margot stood at the bottom of the stairs, suddenly unsure. "I don't know what happens now. What do you want to happen?" "I don't know. I've never—" She struggled to articulate it. "I've never been with someone who didn't need me to be strong. My first husband, he was gentle, but he needed me to run things, to make decisions, to be the backbone. And after he died, I convinced myself that's all I was good for, being strong, being the one who holds things together." Silas set his book aside and stood. "Come here." Margot crossed to him. He guided her to sit on the rug in front of the fireplace, then sat behind her, his legs on either side of hers. He pulled her back against his chest. "What are you—" "Shh, just let me hold you." No expectations, no performance. Just this. Margot tensed, then gradually relaxed against him. His chest was solid behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. His chin rested on her shoulder. She was so much bigger than him, but somehow she felt held, protected, safe. "This is nice," she whispered. "This is what you deserve, every single day. Not someone who needs you to be strong. Someone who's strong enough that you can finally rest." Tears slid down Margot's cheeks again. "I'm so tired, Silas. I'm so tired of pretending I'm not scared, of pretending I don't need anyone, of being alone." "Then don't be alone anymore. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." His arms tightened around her. "You can be tired here. You can be scared here. You can be whatever you need to be, and I'll still be here." Margot turned in his arms, awkwardly repositioning until she faced him. Her eyes searched his. "What if I'm too much? What if my grief is too heavy? What if I can't ever be the woman you thought you were getting? Then we'll figure it out together." "But Margot," he cupped her face in both hands. "You're not too much. You're exactly enough. The grief, the fear, the walls, all of it. I can handle it. I want to handle it." "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why would you want someone as damaged as me?" "Because I'm damaged too, and maybe two broken people can make something whole if they're honest about their pieces." He leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. "Let me prove it to you. Let me show you that I can handle all of you, not just the armor, but what's underneath." "How?" "Trust me, just for tonight. Let me take care of you the way you actually need, not the way you boasted about, the way you're too scared to ask for." Margot's heart hammered. This was more terrifying than any physical intimacy. This was emotional nakedness, vulnerability, surrender. "Okay," she whispered. "Show me." Silas kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then softly her lips. The kiss was gentle, patient, not demanding anything from her, just offering comfort, connection, presence. When he pulled back, Margot was crying again. But these weren't tears of pain. They were tears of relief, of finally being seen for who she really was and not being rejected. "Come on," Silas said, standing and pulling her up with him. "Let's go to bed. And before you panic, I mean sleep. Actually sleep in each other's arms. Nothing else. Not tonight, but I thought tonight is about trust. About showing you that I meant what I said. That I can handle you at your most vulnerable without taking advantage. He led her toward the stairs. Everything else can wait until you're ready. Until you trust that I'm not going anywhere. They climbed the stairs together. In his bedroom, Silas pulled back the quilts and gestured for her to lie down. She did, and he lay beside her, pulling her back against his chest again, wrapping his arms around her, holding her like she was precious, valuable, worth protecting. "Sleep, Margot," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe here. I promise." And surrounded by his warmth, his steady heartbeat against her back, his arms holding her through the darkness, Margot finally let go. Let herself trust. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found what she'd been searching for all along. Not someone to dominate, not someone to intimidate, but someone strong enough to let her finally rest. Margot woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of Silas moving quietly around the room. For a moment she was disoriented. Then memory flooded back. The boast, his unexpected response, the way he'd held her through the night without asking for anything in return. She sat up slowly, the quilt falling away. Silas stood by the window, already dressed, looking out at the ranch. He turned when he heard her move. "Morning," he said softly. "How'd you sleep?" Margot considered lying, considered rebuilding her walls. Then she remembered his words from last night. "Be honest, be vulnerable, be real." "Better than I have in months," she admitted. "Maybe years." Something shifted in Silas's expression. Relief, hope. "Good. That's good." He crossed to the bed and sat on the edge. "How are you feeling about everything? About yesterday? About what I said?" Margot pulled the quilt up around herself, not from shame but from habit. Confused, grateful, terrified, all at once. "That's honest." He reached out and took her hand. "Can I tell you something?" "Yes, last night. When you finally let yourself just be held, when you stopped performing and just let yourself be tired and scared. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Margot's eyes filled with tears. It didn't feel brave. It felt like giving up. No, giving up is building walls so high nobody can reach you. What you did was let me in. That takes more courage than any boast or any armor. He squeezed her hand. "And I want you to know something. What you showed me last night, that vulnerable, exhausted, real version of you, that's the woman I want to build a life with. Not the performer, her. But what if that's all I am now? What if I'm just broken and tired and scared? Then we work with broken and tired and scared, and slowly together we build something new." Silas stood and pulled her up with him. "Get dressed. Come downstairs. I want to show you something." Curiosity overrode her anxiety. Margot dressed quickly in a simple work dress, braided her hair, and followed Silas downstairs and out the back door. The Wyoming morning was crisp and clear. Mountains rose in the distance, purple against the sunrise. Silas led her to a small fenced area behind the barn, where 3 wooden crosses stood. "My wife, my son, and my daughter," Silas said quietly. "She was stillborn 2 years before my son. I never talk about her. Most people don't even know she existed." Margot's throat tightened. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to understand something. I know what grief looks like. I know what it does to a person. How it makes you build walls and push people away and test everyone to see if they'll stay." He turned to face her. "And I know that yesterday, when you made that boast, you were testing me, seeing if I'd run, seeing if I could handle the worst version of you. And you didn't run? No, because the worst version of you is still someone worth knowing, worth loving, worth choosing every single day." He took both her hands. "But here's what I need you to understand, Margot. I'm choosing you, not the armor, not the performance. You, the scared, tired, grieving woman who just wants someone strong enough to let her rest. That's who I want." Margot pulled her hands free and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. "I don't know if I deserve this. Deserve you, you do. And I'm going to spend however long it takes proving it to you." He held her tight. "But I need something from you, too." She pulled back to look at him. What? Stop testing me. Stop waiting for me to fail. Stop assuming I'm going to run or hurt you or prove I'm just like everyone else. His voice was gentle but firm. Give me a real chance, Margot. Not a test. A chance. I'm scared. I know. So am I. But let's be scared together instead of alone. Deal? Margot looked at this quiet rancher who'd seen through every defense she'd built and hadn't run, who'd held her through the night without demanding anything, who was asking her to trust him, not because he'd proven himself perfect, but because he was willing to try. Deal, she whispered. Silas smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Good, now come on. I'll make breakfast, and you can tell me what you actually want out of this marriage. Not what you think you should want, what you actually want. They walked back to the house hand in hand. Over breakfast, eggs and bacon and strong coffee, Margot found herself talking, really talking, about her first husband, about her grief, about how scared she was of losing someone again, about how exhausted she was from pretending to be invincible. And Silas listened, really listened, not waiting for his turn to talk, not judging. Just present and attentive and accepting. So what do you actually want from this marriage? Silas asked when she finally ran out of words. If you could have anything, if you didn't have to perform or pretend or protect yourself, what would you want? Margot thought about it, really thought. Then she answered honestly, I want a partner. Someone I can be weak with. Someone who sees me at my worst and doesn't leave. Someone I can trust enough to stop being strong all the time. You've got it. All of it. Silas reached across the table. And what I want is someone honest. Someone real. Someone who'll tell me when they're scared instead of pushing me away. Can you do that? I can try. That's all I'm asking, try. And when you mess up, because you will, and so will I, we talk about it. We don't run. We don't hide behind walls. We just talk. Agreed? Agreed. 3 months later, the town of Clearwater, Wyoming, had plenty to say about Silas Thorne and his giant mail-order bride. They whispered about how she'd arrived making scandalous boasts, how she was too big, too bold, too much woman for a quiet man like Silas. But if anyone had looked closely, really looked, they would have seen something different. They would have seen Margot's shoulders gradually relaxing, her defensive walls slowly coming down, her loud voice softening into something genuine. They would have seen Silas watching his wife with quiet pride, seeing her not as too much, but as exactly enough. They would have seen two broken people healing each other, an honest conversation at a time. One morning, as Margot stood in the general store buying supplies, she overheard two women whispering, I still don't understand it. What does a man like Silas Thorne see in a woman like that? So big and loud and vulgar, the old Margot would have turned and said something cutting. Would have proven she didn't care what they thought by being even louder, even bolder. But the new Margot, the real Margot who'd learned she didn't have to perform anymore, just smiled and kept shopping because she knew something those women didn't. She knew what Silas saw when he looked at her. Not the armor, not the performance, just her, scared and strong, wounded and hopeful. Broken and healing, and that was enough. When she got home, Silas was waiting on the porch. He helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering on her waist. Town gossips giving you trouble again, he asked, seeing something in her expression. They were talking. But I didn't care. She leaned down and kissed him. Because I know something they don't. What's that? That the loudest boasts hide the quietest hearts. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let someone else be strong for you. She wrapped her arms around him. Thank you for being strong enough to handle all of me, even the parts I was scared to show. Thank you for trusting me enough to show them. Silas pulled her close. And Margot? That boast you made the day you arrived? What about it? You were right about one thing. She pulled back to look at him. What? His eyes sparkled with rare humor. I definitely can't sit right anymore, but not for the reason you threatened, for a much better one. Margot laughed, a real, full, unguarded laugh that came from somewhere deep inside where the armor used to be. You're ridiculous, maybe, but I'm your ridiculous husband. You're stuck with me now. I don't feel stuck. She kissed him again, deeper this time. I feel found. They stood on that porch in the Wyoming sunshine, two people who'd found each other through letters and loneliness and the courage to be vulnerable. And they knew that whatever challenges came, grief, fear, doubt, they'd face them together, not with boasts or armor or performance, but with honesty, with trust, with the quiet, steady strength that comes from knowing you're loved exactly as you are. So here's what I want you to know. If you're reading this, if you've made it this far in their story, maybe you know what it feels like to hide behind armor, to boast when you're scared, to test people to see if they'll stay, to wonder if anyone could handle the real you, the tired, wounded, imperfect you. The answer is yes. Someone can. Someone will. But first, you have to be brave enough to let them see you, really see you. Not the performance, not the armor, just you. And if this story touched you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you that vulnerability is strength and the loudest words often hide the softest hearts, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications, because there are more stories like this. More tales of broken people finding wholeness. More reminders that you're not too much. You're exactly enough. From Wyoming to wherever you are, you deserve someone who sees through your armor and loves what's underneath. Don't settle for anything less. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories that remind you that you're worthy of love exactly as you are. See you in the next one.